Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, and many of you are probably wondering why Pete doesn't have a nice big 80-inch monitor behind him. Well, it's because Pete can't afford it because he went short the market and I went long the market, and the market's done like this. Just kidding. Pete never shorts anything. But you are tuned in to the Rebel's Edge. Pete and I are going to tell you about what the latest tariff news about Trump putting a 100% tariff on some French films, I guess, Pete, and what that means for your money right after this on the Rebel's Edge. By the way, Pete, do you think I'd look younger without the goatee? With the goatee. Without the goatee? With the goatee.
I don't know.
Well, it's been a heck of a day already, Pete. Mark and I were on the New York Stock Exchange today, and a lot of people saying hi, which is always nice. And we had a great company on the New York Stock Exchange, and we'll cover one of those companies in our macro stock observation today because it moved pretty big. But let's start right off with the macro minute, Pete, and talk about what's going on with the chart that our friends over at Fundstrat were nice enough to send me. This chart kind of shows you the performance for basically the end of March into about the second or third week in April, and then from then, second or third week in April till now. And they pretty much just flipped upside down, Pete. Everything that was down big is now the big winner, which includes the Mag 7. And that's the chart that I wanted to share with you guys and hear a little bit of Pete's thoughts on the overall macro market.
Yep. John, for me, the macro side of it has to be Buffett, right? I mean, it was a big weekend with Buffett, with Berkshire, the reports, and obviously waited for a while, and suddenly we're hearing about the fact that Buffett is saying, hey, look, by the end of the year, I'm walking away. But he's not fully walking away. He's still going to be involved. He actually said that. But he is stepping down to giving the mantle to another gentleman who's been there a long time, basically been in training to be this position. So it's not something that I think people should be totally shocked by, but I think it was something that certainly gave the markets a little bit of a fear for a moment, and then I think they got rid of that. I think they realized Berkshire's still going to be Berkshire, and even with Buffett stepping down, he's still going to have an influence for a little while, John.
Yeah, and he's this guy, Mr. Abel, is one of those guys, Pete, that has basically been in charge of almost everything but insurance over at Berkshire, as Mr. Buffett and, of course, Charlie Munger, who passed away, as they've sort of been grooming him for this position. And, boy, they've got 100 and some odd companies, Pete, within the Berkshire empire, and investments in stocks like Apple, of course, and Coca-Cola, which were pretty much ubiquitous at the conference this weekend. All right, Pete, let's hit futures. I bet you're going to say VIX and or gold. I'm going to say crude oil because it traded below 56 to the barrel today. And Brent futures, which is, of course, the European version from the North Sea and so forth, that was down almost 5%, traded down to $58 a barrel. That doesn't sound like a lot of inflation there coming our way, does it, Pete?
It does not. As a matter of fact, I heard recently, John, that at the national average, we're down about 50 cents year over year from what people are paying at the pump. So that certainly has come down. Energy specifically has really come down dramatically. I am going to hit the VIX, and what I'm going to hit right now is this, John. We started off April with a 22 VIX. We spiked up. We got up into the 60s. We actually fooled around for a while into the 30s and 40s. Where are we today? We came right back to 22. Gives you a little bit of an idea. Basically, it's coming from his big day of liberation all the way down to Cinco de Mayo. So this big jump that we had in the VIX has now come all the way back. Doesn't mean that it's going to sit right here. As a matter of fact, I don't expect it to sit right here. I expect it to continue to move around. But the closer we get to 20, we aren't that far away from where we really started this whole thing down there at 17. And the VIX has been telling us, and we've been seeing 50 Cent actually reach out there and going for some puts. Looks like he's going to be right again, John.
50 Cent has a pretty strong track record for being right, not in the very, very short term,
right,
but over a longer period of time, especially.
Thanks, Jon and Pete. Got a quick small cap spotlight for you today, folks. This is a follow-up on a company that we've covered before, OS Therapies. The symbol is OSTX. This is a biotech company that's developing a number of therapies primarily for the osteosarcoma category of cancers, particularly and unfortunately in children, pediatric cancer therapies. But this part of the story is actually about the application of some of these cancer therapies for the veterinary market. That's right, these guys are leading in research and development of applications to help treat cancer, primarily in dogs. And the company is featured in a movie that's coming out on May 15th called Shelter Me. This is a heartwarming story about how shelter dogs play a role in the recovery of patients from a variety of things and how this company is helping give back. So OSTX being featured in that movie, Shelter Me, coming out on May 15th. The stock up today, was up as much as 11%. So OSTX shareholders definitely enjoying it. That's it for today's Small Cap Spotlight.
All right, let's talk about what President Trump did with tariffs, Pete, because he didn't impose, he proposed a 100% tariff on foreign produced films. And Peter Schiff wondered out loud why. Maybe Peter's been backing some of these films, Pete, but I think a lot of it is just like some of the work that is done in particular, Pete, Toronto and Vancouver. A lot of films, U.S. films, are finding it too expensive to film here, so they instead go up there to Canada. And maybe that's one of the issues that he's addressing. But other than that, I really would say that the impact, which was felt by Netflix the most of any of the major streamers, it fell about 6% and then rallied back. And Disney is actually positive on the day. So this doesn't seem like it's that big a deal, at least right now, Pete.
No, the knee-jerk reaction was, of course, the panic side of things. But then I think people started to realize, well, is this something that really could go through? Is this really it's more of a federal excise tax, John, than it is anything else. I mean, and it's a strange way to approach this whole thing. I don't disagree with the president as far as should we have a lot more films being filmed here? Sure. But unfortunately, because of costs, it doesn't work that way and doesn't work all that well. So I think when we look at Netflix and we look at Disney got all the way down to 89. It jumped all the way back up to 92 and was green last I looked, John. So the fact that they were getting hit, that Netflix specifically were getting hit probably the most in the pre-market, boy, that got erased pretty quickly. And I just don't know how they'd implement this. I think it's something where, yes, we'd love to have these films here. We just got to figure out a way to get them here, John. I don't know that taxing essentially 100% is the way to go. So I hope that the president reconsiders some of his thoughts about this whole thing.
I believe he will, Pete. But I do understand that he does want a lot more things made in America, which does include movies. But I'm in agreement with you. I don't think this is the way to go about that, really. Yeah. All right, let's talk for a moment, Pete, about what's going on in BCRX, because this one immediately, Bio Cryst came up with some very positive earnings. They basically beat by about 6 cents a share. Revenue was also up almost 57% year over year. And for that reason, BCRX was one of the pre-market winners, and it's holding on to a lot of that gain, Pete.
You know, in the pre-market, John, it was actually trading over $11. It's not been there ever since the pre-market. As a matter of fact, it hit new 52-week highs at a little over $10, $10.35, I think. But yeah, when you raise your outlook, they did that. When you beat on your earnings, they did that. And you beat on your revenue, they did that. I would say this is a pretty good quarter. One of the things that they did talk about as well was they wanted to make sure that their goal is to have a sustained profitability. And obviously, you know, when you're looking at somebody like this, therapeutics and rare diseases, it's not always an easy road that they're taking, but that's okay because they're actually out there trying to get the right treatments for people out there, the right therapeutics for people. And that's what's so important. I will say this, they do have a pretty strong pipeline, John. They've got one that's already out there commercially, but outside of that, they've got about 5 or 6 others in the lineup trying to get there. So I think this is a company that they're knocking at the door. If they can continue to be profitable and like their goal is to do that, I think this is a company that has plenty of room to the upside. But obviously, a lot of that is out of our control in terms of, and their control. It's got to get approved. They've got to get these things across the line. And that's what people will be looking for in the future.
Well, let's switch it up, Pete, back to gold, because we know it was up 80 cents an ounce, which is a pretty good sized move today. And once again, the gold mining stocks were some of the big leaders today. Harmony, HMY, as well as Anglo Ashanti AU, both moving up strong. But Harmony, Pete, I wanted to point out, is up almost 100% year to date. It's up in the mid 90% year to date numbers, and just an extraordinary move for them. And if you're in the gold stocks, you're a happy camper throughout all of 2025.
I'll even throw GLD out there, John. That's one of those that we've talked about. We've seen a lot of option activity in there. They've been coming after it. Matter of fact, the most recent one they had was on May 1st, really aggressively going right back after GLD with the call buying. And they're coming in there, John. They're not just coming in there buying 1,000 or 10,000. They're coming in there for 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 options to the upside. So I keep looking at that, GLD, and then some of the individual names as well. And even, you know, you look at the year-to-date, GLD up 23.5%, gold itself up 23.5% rather, 36% in the last year. Those are big runs to the upside that we're seeing. Really, really impressive. And I'll tell you what, wherever you choose to look, there's a lot of different ways that you could try to attack this thing. I like GLD the best right now, but I do like some of those individual names that you pointed out as well, John. I mean, how do you deny something like a Harmony going up the way it's going?
Yeah, and obviously, for those of you who wonder out loud or even text us or DM us, hey, why is that one up so much? Because of the contracts they sign, they have to pay a certain amount for the amount of gold that they take out of the ground, out of those mines. In some cases, they own the mine. In other cases, it's on somebody else's land, Pete. And they've contracted with them to pay, for instance, a much lower price than where it is right now because it's at record highs. Nobody sets a thing and says, hey, I think I'm willing to pay you $3,400 an ounce for this mining lease. Nope. They're like, oh, okay, $2,800. And now it's $3,300. That's $500 an ounce profit, more than you expected otherwise. So there's a whole host of reasons why we might see that. All right, let's talk now about Skechers, Pete. Yeah, this year they had Snoop Dogg, and Mark and I had actually talked to a guy, Pete, at Rad Intel just a week ago. And one of the things they do is they determine who are the best people that you should be bringing in for influencers. Snoop Dogg was one that they chose, and it's one of their clients, by the way, over at Rad Intel. Well, Snoop Dogg was talking about the slip-in shoes where you don't have to tie them or anything for the Super Bowl. They spent a lot of money. Well, I guess it worked, Pete, because the stock popped after the Super Bowl all the way up to $79 a share. But then the tariff discussion came in and it drove it down hard. So they bottomed at, let's see, just the 8th of April, Pete, it was a $44 stock. They should be thanking their lucky stars that the president came along, Pete, because the buyers of this are getting it for around $65 a share now, a far cry from 79. So somebody made a lot of money on this trade.
Yeah, it's $9 billion for these guys, John. I mean, that's a really healthy number. I mean, 3G Capital, that's a huge acquisition that we're talking about here. It's great for them. They've done a fantastic job. This just is another great example too, John, of somebody who's out there actually very much competing with Nike. Whether Nike wants to admit it or not, there's a lot of competition out there taking away from Nike. And obviously, they moved over, and their big growth spot was going to be China. Well, that started to slow down as well, just like it has for Starbucks and some of the others. So it's interesting to see how this whole thing is playing out. But the competitiveness in the shoe market has been incredible, and a lot of new folks out there. But Skechers doing an outstanding job. I think they've executed very, very well. And to your point, from $79 to $44, and now here it is. I think they're going to get taken out for whatever, $65, $66 a share. There's a good reason this thing's up about 25% today. And if it actually gets to the number, it'll be up about 30% at 66, John.
Well, it was a pretty incredible weekend for hockey, Pete. And I know you're a big hockey fan. You played it a lot longer than I did, but it's, I think, becoming a real competitor to basketball in terms of fandom, Pete, because the games are exciting. They don't do load management, meaning the stars don't just sit down and not play. They play every night that they're out there. And in some cases, of course, the games get pretty rough. But there was a great game between the, what is it, Pete, though? The Winnipeg, and the St. Louis Blues. And we thought we'd show you that one because this was a heck of a game. And watch this, which was just with 10 seconds left, Pete, 10 seconds, amazing. Or as Grant would do, 10x, 10 seconds, watch what happens.
It was Thomas as Velarde desperate to get it. Under 10 seconds to go. The Jets with an opportunity. Ehlers misfires, passes across the shot.
It's amazing the control and the ability. The guy standing right there, John, put the stick out and slaps it right in there. Unreal. Too bad for St. Louis because they were great fighters. They had a great season. You know, St. Louis is one of these places, John, where every once in a while they just put it all together. They won the Stanley Cup not that long ago. As a matter of fact, a couple of Minnesotans were on that team, so I've actually seen the Stanley Cup. It's pretty amazing. But wow, that was pretty good. And you know what? Let's be honest. Winnipeg's been great all year. These guys have been absolutely dominant. So the fact that they were doing that going into the last 10 seconds, it's not that shocking. Those guys are great.
Yeah, I bet Brett Hull, Pete, was like, just when he was watching that because he was a great one for them for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, let's just jump into a little bit. It's still NFL time. It's always NFL time. And I think the most interesting thing that's been going on is no longer talking about Shedeur. We've all out-talked that whole thing. But it's interesting to me because there's another issue going on. Abdul Carter, the outside linebacker / defensive end, came from Penn State, very high pick. They got big trades going on and everything. He went to the New York Giants. He says, you know what? I'd like to wear Lawrence Taylor's jersey. Well, the first thought I had was, whoa, cowboy. His jersey's retired. This is the greatest player, outside linebacker, to ever put on a helmet, for crying out loud. And you know what? Once your jersey's retired, isn't it supposed to stay retired? Anyway, the whole thing has been confusing to me because it happened again, John, because he goes, well, all right, I guess I get it. I'm a little bit frustrated, but I get it. So you know what? I want Phil Simms' number. His is also retired, but I want number 11. Phil Simms said, I don't think so. So I wanted to throw out to you the idea that something's retired. Am I confused about this? I don't think I am, but that means that no one ever wears it again for that team, right? Because this guy was special. This guy, did something. And Lawrence Taylor particularly, let's be honest. I mean, there's a reason left tackles get paid the kind of money they get paid. It's because of Lawrence Taylor. I've gone as far as to say each one of those guys should probably give 10% of their contract to Lawrence Taylor throughout the rest of their career because they're getting paid because of him. So it's just one of the craziest things I've seen, John, but I wanted to run it past you and see if am I wrong? If it's retired, shouldn't it be retired?
Yes, it should. And is he wrong to ask for it? Depending how he asked, because, you and I didn't hear it.
Right.
But if he would have said, hey, man, I'd really like to honor you by wearing your number because you're the greatest to ever play and all that? Or did he just say, hey, I'd really like to wear 56? Pete's right, though. This guy is a legend. He is the guy The Blind Side is about. some people think, oh, it's about that guy, the big kid who was homeless and all that. No, the reason that big homeless kid got drafted so high by the Ravens and made, tens of millions of dollars through his career was because Lawrence Taylor broke Joe Theismann's leg, coming from the blind side.
Yeah.
So when you've got stones enough to ask a Hall of Fame linebacker for his number that's been retired, that's pretty bold. Now, I'm not saying it's as, dumb as the Shadur interviews were, Pete, because those were pretty dumb. But I don't think this was very well thought out by him and his team.
Right.
If he wanted to, he could do, like what Jordan did when he came back. His number was hanging from the rafters, and it was his number.
Right.
So what did he do? He picked 45, and he wore 45 until one day when he said, hey, I really need my old jersey back. I need the old Magic. And then he got it. But I think he could go for 65, Pete, instead of 56. In other words, reverse it or do whatever. But they should not unretire a number, in my opinion.
Once it's retired, man. They retired it for a reason. I totally agree with you. It's kind of nuts. I don't know if you got a chance to see this, but my second one today, John, is about Scotty Scheffler. Did you get a chance to see what this guy did this past weekend? Absolutely unbelievable. He finished 31 under par, and he closed out with a 63. The guy had nearly a flawless round, and 72 holes, he scored a record there. He tied the PGA record. I don't know. It's unbelievable what these guys are able to do, how they're able to control things. And it's one of those things, because we all know that there's a point in time where you lose a little focus, right? And whatever. This guy didn't lose any focus at all. He was just going through it. And every time I looked, John, his score just kept getting further and further away from the guy in second place and third place and fourth place. It was an unbelievable thing. And I'll tell you what, golf, I think, has gotten far more intriguing than it was. Now, we had to go through that whole thing where there was no Tiger Woods out there. But I think that there's a lot of players now that are really, really special. And I think, Scheffler's one of them. By the way, he started off the season really poorly. He was not playing great golf. And now all of a sudden he's playing great golf with a bunch of other guys who are playing great golf. Golf has become pretty daggone fun to watch, man. These guys, what they can do and how they do it is absolutely incredible.
Pete, how'd you like to be Jordan Spieth? Because he had 2 rounds under 70, which obviously is under par. Virtually everywhere in the world, par is somewhere between 71 and 73 on a course. And he had 2 rounds under 70 and lost by 12.
I mean,
yeah. Well, and think about this. Scheffler's out there, Pete, and he shoots a 61 on his first part of this. And then he shoots a 63, and then he really falls out of bed and, hits a 66.
Unreal.
I mean, yeah, when you're that good, you're basically just, a legend that should be recognized. And obviously he and his caddy are banking some pretty good money because, as most of you know, the caddies on the big wins like this get a pretty significant portion of the purse. And I'm sure Scheffler and his caddy are more or less partners for life after this, Pete, because somebody's clubbing that dude pretty damn well.
Yeah. It's fun listening to them talk, and they get you closer and closer to golf all the time. All these guys got microphones, little headphones in, and do these little chats and everything. They've really figured out a lot of good things in golf to really make it that much more interesting, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it at the Masters, Pete, because, unlike some sports, even though baseball now has that pitch clock and so forth, and basketball has the shot clock, in golf, you see one guy hit, and then 5 seconds later, there's another guy on a different hole that's teeing off, and then they go to some guy who's putting on a green, 3 holes over, blah, blah, blah. So it's like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Understand what fans want rather than, back in the old days, Garcia Parra or whatever with the, he had to put the gloves on twice, take a couple of cuts, and all that kind of stuff when he was with the Red Sox. It used to be like 2 minutes every single pitch because the guy'd have to, like I say, tighten up the straps on the gloves and step back and
That
so
was
forth.
brutal.
And the fans are just sitting there going, God, this is terrible. Well, we hope you guys are enjoying the day and the comeback that the market made. We'll see how far we can either extend into the green or whether we fall back. But it doesn't seem likely that it's this one tariff that's on the films that's going to be that big a driver. But if you want to know for sure, tune into the Rebels Edge tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be coming to you from the Milk and Pete out in California, and you'll be God knows where up in Minnesota. So
Happier
good
than
luck.
a pig in slop.
See you tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.
See ya.